where we you're on this lovely journey and you just come upon some situations that you can't get over. You can't get over. And for some of them, they are before you, but when you get to them, you realize that they really weren't just before you. They're coming from something behind you from before. And so it's a past that creates a bolster and a crippling circumstance and a blockade for you moving forward in the future. So what exactly is getting past your past? Or past indicates things that are behind us in some way. This could mean things as far back as how we were conceived. For some people, we've learned about how we were conceived and the pressures of that, the pressures of how we were being born, in the situations in which we were being born, and of course, the situations in which we were raised. Our past also indicates things that impact our lives in the in-between years. And I think this is what is troubling for most people. Usually the ones that hold us back are those that impacted us negatively. So we've had great experiences in our lives and we've had negative experiences. And of course, it's the negative ones that have impacted us and stand before us even as we try to move forward. So how do we get past these? How do we let go from the things that have crippled us for a period in the past? And in a way, to what I'm saying next is, how do we get past something so critical and impactful that we are still frozen under that control today? And when I think of this, I think of the perfect tense in the English language, the idea of something happening in the past, but the effect continues to the present. That's how some of the situations in our lives have impacted us. They've been so negative and crippling that they freeze you, not since the time it happened, but even years later, you find yourself still frozen and not know how to move forward. You're stuck. And there are a few reasons that we could explore, especially in just the fact that we have limited time. And this is not a therapy session. This is more of a presentation, a training, a workshop, a webinar, whatever we want to call it. The fact is, in some of the previous sessions, I talked about this, and I wanted to bring this back today, especially for those who weren't here in the earlier months. I mentioned how, as therapists, we often try to explore these 5 main areas with clients before we present a solution to a client. We don't just hear someone's situation the first time and just give a diagnosis and this is it. There has to be some level of history, information gathering, exploring what the situations have been. And so for most of us, we try to group them, even if we don't call them these, and different areas in therapy will call them different things, but this is how they're grouped. We call them the presenting concerns, predisposing factors, precipitating factors, perpetuating factors. And so presenting concerns for us is what's going on with this client right now. And then we try to figure out what might have caused those things to be affecting that client. So it's the question of the why me? Why me? Why is this happening to me? And then we ask the why now? What are the factors that are precipitating these? And why do they continue? Why is it continuing? What's going on to the point where the situation continues for so long? And then we ask the question, what can we rely on? What are your supports? What are your strengths? What do you have around you that can help you through this? So I'll take you back again. I know this is repeat for those who've been here before, but I'll take you back to the predisposing factors. Those are what we call, on a general, the biosocial factors. They have to do with the biology and they have to do with the social. This is the argument of the nature-nurture factors. So nature we look at here would be developmental issues, things that happen from within conception, you know, whether parents had great mental health during that period, or if they probably had issues going on, maybe substance use during pregnancy, whatever the substance might be it drugs or alcohol, dysfunctional environment in which maybe the parents existed, especially mother. And so it framed all of those emotions from that child is within the womb. Maybe history of violence in the home. Those things create a lot of impact on the unborn child because it shifts the emotions in the mother, and emotions are somehow transferred and sensed by the unborn child. They react. They know when you're frightened, when you're excited, when you're sad, or so on. They respond similarly to how the mother responds during pregnancy. You find if you've been miserable and uncomfortable and just irritable, the baby comes with the same kind of miserable mentality, just always crying, always fussy, for no, even when they're being held. Those are things that come out of many times the genetic disposition from that child unborn was in the womb. And so we also think of the things that we can't change, the physical features that we can't change. It affects us mentally as well, from whatever state, the mental state of that mother. And it might have been caused by external factors or maybe by the spouse. It doesn't matter who, maybe work conditions, maybe just the financial situations that parents are in, just the circumstances that exist could impact the unborn child. So those are the nature factor. But hey, the child is born now, and here, you are here, we are here, we are here. What are some of the things that affect us? Again, the nurturing piece. This is what DBT believes to be a huge contributor to people's lives, to a number of mental dysfunctions and so on. And it is what DBT describes. And DBT is dialectical behavior therapy. It's a therapy model that looks at some of the factors that affect and cause crippling circumstances in people's lives. Clients who are high risk, clients who continue to fall into, deep, maybe chronic, acute mental health issues. DBT is one of those therapy models used for these kinds of clients. And so DBT believes that one of the things that contributes a lot to nature and could affect a client so badly is what is termed as an invalidating environment. An invalidating environment, however, is not just something that someone says to you negatively and that's it. It is an environment that is pervasively invalidating. So pervasively means that you're so often, constantly being rejected or put down. It doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you do, you're never accepted, appreciated. It's always a cut down, a shut up, a put down, just rejected. That is what you call a pervasively invalidating environment. An environment in which probably the child found him or herself always being ignored, constantly being ignored. An environment you're constantly being corrected. It's like a correction fluid. Everything you do, you are corrected. It means that you're never given scope to fail, to make your own mistakes, and then to recognize it after and to pick up your own self after. You're always being corrected, always being undermined. Everything, it doesn't matter how bright your idea and how great, oh, you could never achieve that. It always just undermining and also minimizing is another one. You speak about your hurt, you speak about your emotions, and it's shut down. It's just minimized. Oh, there's no need for you to feel that way. And the truth is, there may not be a real need, but the person feels this way. And emotions are real, even if they're not facts. And so if those emotions are shut down, a child talks about being scared, and maybe constantly being shut down, you have nothing to be afraid of. Why are you afraid? You must be afraid of your father. You must be afraid of whatever. It's important that we recognize that these pervasively used are very invalidating. And within those kids are developed some kinds of traits that move forward to certain emotions that come back to haunt you in the future because they started in the past. And so those are things that we are talking about today in the biosocial factors. So the precipitating factors, why now? What are the triggers right now? So why are those things surfacing? 20 years ago that happened, 30 years, it just came back to you. A pain, a hurt that you felt 15 years ago or 5 years ago. Why is it here right now? What triggered that? Is it that you're having feelings of rejection? Is it that you're in an environment right now where you feel rejected? Or maybe you feel some sense of humiliation, maybe shame, maybe vengefulness. You feel like you need to avenge somebody. You're revengeful, you're unforgiving, you're bitter. What is that trigger? Is it some disappointment? that brought that back on? Where, because the question is, where in your life have you experienced this before? That tends to be a question that I would ask a client. Where have you seen this pattern before? Where was this present in your life before? And so why is there that trigger now? And many times you find the client, oh my God, I finally know why I'm this anxious, why I'm this scared, why I have this feeling. This is because, of course, that this happened to me 20 years ago, 50 years ago, stuff like that. So what is triggering this? Is it also that maybe you're experiencing some kind of physical or emotional abuse? It could be sexual abuse, it could be verbal abuse, it could be psychological abuse from something or someone within the environment that you're in. It could be home, it could be school, it could be work. It could be just about anything. It could be in your community, it could be the neighbor, it could be someone who continues to berate you and demean you in a way. And so now that rehashes for you something that happened 50 years ago. And maybe could be some family baggage that just started stirring up since COVID, never surfaced before. Now that creates a history because it's a trigger point. And then you remembered when you were 6, this happened. You never remembered that before. It was suppressed in such a way in your subconscious that you never remembered it. But somewhere it just hit you like a ton of bricks. And you realize for the moment that, oh my God, I've had this issue before. And so it could also be maybe that the pressures around you, or you've heard of someone self-harming. We call this self-injurious behavior, or for you, harming yourself. You've had thoughts of harming yourself, or you find yourself cutting or doing things and suicidal behaviors, attempting, taking that whole bottle of Tylenol or whatever painkiller, and you're wondering, where's this coming from? Sometimes that's family history too. History in the family of suicidal behaviors, and all of that is crowding in. What is triggering right now the emotions that's bringing back the past, that's keeping this bolster before you? Is it an unstable mood that you are having? And high impulsivity, you find yourself just shopping online because it's available, and you feel like maybe the more shopping I do, the more COVID is going to go away. But no, it's not going to affect COVID going or coming. So those things also, and then you get depressed and upset because you find yourself broke, in debt, and then you're trying to figure out how to stop this, but you can't stop yourself. The high impulsivity, not just in shopping, but maybe in how you react to people. You're just from 0 to 100 in seconds. And that becomes a shock to others around you. What's going on? Maybe for some people, it's going through divorce or separation or a breakup in the home. It could be anything that triggered this. One of the things that could trigger this also, negative social relationships and maybe poor physical health. If you're really ailing, you're having aches and pains, then you find that you're triggered more easily by other things. Think about having a headache. When you have a headache, you find that you have less tolerance for certain things. Those are physical health issues that will affect how you respond and why you probably dig and sink deeper into what's going on. But why do these things continue? So it's okay if you're triggered today. You know, you woke up with an intense headache and you found you were snapping at everyone, or you probably never got to eat on time, and the irritability from being hungry, you were snapping. But this is continuing. Why is it continuing over and over? You push away relationships. You yell at everybody who comes into your life and mean you any kind of good. It doesn't matter how many people. And you keep pushing people away. Why is the behavior? What's keeping you stuck in this cycle of pain, disappointment, and all the issue, the shame, the guilt, all the issues that you find are keeping, the fear. The feeling stuck, the never moving forward, the never getting up to accomplish your dream or vision of anything because you are so crippled by something. What is that thing? Is it because you are experiencing a mental illness? Maybe. You've been having this mood cyclical for 2 years, 3 years, and it's just every other day or two, you know you are depressed and so on. It has a name, and it could be a mental illness, and it's something that you need to seek some kind of treatment for or professional help for. So that could cause you to be stuck in a cycle of depression, anxiety, whatever it is. You could also be likely, for some people, especially in COVID, they've been using substance use as a means of coping, be it smoking, using drugs, taking alcohol. And like I've always said, it doesn't have to be any kind of illicit drugs and so on, or illegal, depending on where you live. We're talking about even psychotropic drugs, even over-the-counter drugs. People are using excessively to try to cope, right? That could also affect how you feel and why you remain stuck in this cycle. COVID-19 could be the reason for many people. You just feel trapped, literally, like the entire world feels right now. And I want to say you're not alone. But I find also that many people find themselves stuck in their past, not because of COVID-19, which brings on isolation and anxiety and fear, and these are emotions that probably are heightened right now, but because of social media. So now you have the time to be online, watching everybody's story on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name them, Snapchat, all the things that we have around us. And what you find happening is that you begin to wonder, the world is living their dream, and here I am stuck, becoming nothing and nobody, I'm a loser, and all of these things, that you begin to judge yourself and compare yourself to what you see on social media. Remember, social media is someone posting something. They choose to, I create the flyers to post them on social media. Those who've seen the video with the book, I got that done to put it on social media. There are filters on social media to reflect a certain look and like and what have you. Guys, you know it. Many of us here are using it. So social media is the worst place to try to take any comparison of yourself. People try to put the best out there, even when it's far from the truth. It's an illusion. And so you're stuck in it though, because it looks like this person's story or everybody's story seems so up and it and lit and fire and whatever else we want to call it. So is it that you're being stuck in this cycle because of the social media pressure? Or maybe it's your own self-judgment. You judge yourself before you even begin to do anything. You have this great idea and you said, okay, I could do this. Here's a business idea. Here's a plan I have. No, I could never accomplish that. No, so those are for some certain kinds of people. I wasn't raised like that. And you shut yourself down even before you begin. That's coming from far, because that could be part of the pervasively rejecting environment, being put down, that you were raised in. And so that's all you know. And so you've transferred that into what is called a self-sabotaging and judgmental approach to your own life. Or maybe you're in the cycle because you continue to feel so hopeless. You probably also feel heightened anxiety and feeling like you're a failure and a loser. And there's a sense of helplessness and a sense of no escape. Or maybe you're stuck because you accept defeat and victimization. You decide that I will never become anything better. I could never get a better job. I could never achieve anything. And you resign yourself to that thinking and you become a victim of your own self-sabotaging thinking, the imposter syndrome that keeps you held down, stuck, crippled, and frozen. And when you find yourself in this position, this is what usually happens for many people. Even once in their lives, this is when they tell you, for the first time, I developed some recurring thoughts of death or suicide. So either they begin to think that they need to kill themselves, or they begin to pray every day, like Elijah, for God to take his life. So you get recurring thoughts of death where you feel like death would be easier and better, because I can't remain in this state of hopelessness and helplessness. There's no escape. And I feel trapped in this prison. And it's a mental prison because nobody sees walls or grills around you, but you're already trapped in your mind. And that's what Marcus Garvey talked about, emancipating yourself from mental slavery that Bob Marley eventually quoted, right? That's what we're talking about. So I want to say to you today, how do you move yourself from this? There has to be a level of self-awareness. If you remain in denial about where you are in life, then you're never going to move. Self-awareness comes from a self-assessment. And it doesn't matter how many things people tell you, gloating things about yourself. Until you believe those things, they can't have any effect on you, be they good or bad. So if people say negative things to you and you don't take it in personally, it won't have a negative impact on you. If they tell you positive things and you don't take that in personally, it won't have a positive impact on you. So self-awareness is being able to assess yourself and ask yourself certain questions, because only you can move yourself from where you are at. I said it before on this very medium. You can bring a horse to water, like we say, but you can't force them to drink. Doesn't matter how great a therapist I am. I am no good to any client until that client is willing to do the homework exercises and the activities that will move them to the next level, right? So it's like medication. Doctor may be great and amazing, prescribe you the best remedy to help you through the situation. Until you are ready to apply that kind of treatment to yourself, for yourself, you're not going to get to move beyond that point. So you ask yourself, why am I not happy? Why can't I be happy? I'm always miserable, sad, depressed, gloomy, irritable, angry, just cross, rough. Why? Why are you like that? What regrets are you suffering? What do you hate so much about what you have not achieved, or maybe what you've done? What is the regret that is constantly before you, that you're suffering, that it cripples you in such a way? What's keeping you from moving on? That's the question. Ask yourself that. What's keeping me from moving on? Is it the disappointment that I feel about something? Is it guilt that I feel about something? Is it shame? Because shame is what you feel when you say, I have done something or I've involved myself in something. Guilt is when you own it to say, I am that thing. I am that mess. I am that. Right? So that is, shame is more telling you what you feel from it, and guilt is owning that that's who you are. Is that what you are feeling? Maybe you're overthinking. Are you staying up at night just playing over in your head all the times you have failed and all the evil things that were said and done to you? Maybe you're catastrophizing a small thing and you just make it into this massive mountain that was never meant to be, but nobody knows it has become a mountain for you except you. And so you're suffering from that mountain when everybody else sees that, oh, that was just a molehill, there's no issue. And they can't fix that for you. That is a mental thing that it's all in your head, your mind, and there's nothing, no medical doctor can go in there and fix your thinking. As a man thinks, so is he. Proverbs 23:7, that you have to fix that, your seat of emotion, the heart, that frontal cortex that gives you that thinking pattern, that can only be fixed by you. There is no surgery to fix it. The emotion it gives to you in terms of feeling down and sad and depressed because you're thinking that, those things can be treated, and medications can help you to get to a little better place out of the slum and gloom. However, the end result of your thinking will have to come from you and your doing and your decision to let go of certain things. And we're going to get to that. So you ask yourself, do I really want to move on? Because that's it. We can't assume. No doctor will, no healthcare professional No parent who even loves you and want to care for you. Doesn't matter what role. No best friend. No one can help you move on until you are really ready to move on. Do you want to move on? Are you ready to get past your past? Is my past a crutch? And that's something you have to ask yourself, because many people use it, yeah, just like a crutch, like when you have a broken leg. A crutch, something that you hold on to, you use it to support yourself, you use it as your excuse. So you like to say, I have a mental illness, or yeah, I have depression, or I'm just a sad person, or I don't do that. You know, it's important that you recognize how this past is serving you. Some people like to keep the sorry story to share with everyone whom they will meet in their future along the way, because it makes people feel sorry for you. And for some people, that's what they want. So it keeps you victimized. It gives you an excuse to not get up out of bed. It gives you an excuse to not achieve or do anything. It gives you an excuse sometimes to be lazy, because you use it as a crutch. You have to ask yourself that, and you have to know what purpose does this thing serve in your life. So how is it working for you? If it's a crutch, if you've had this for the last 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, I guess you must be benefiting from it. How has it served you? You have to ask yourself that. Is this thing working for me? And if the answer is no, then you need to do something about it. And if it is working for you, well, good for you. There needs to be no change. But if you feel stuck at a point or place in your life, then the question is, do I want to move on? Am I ready to move on? What am I willing to do to move forward from this? So what is the one thing? You don't need 5. It's always one thing. The journey of 1,000 miles begin with a single step. What is the one thing that you could do to change that? One thing, because that one thing then leads into another thing eventually and another. But what is the one decision that you need to make to get yourself unstuck from this? What do you need to get started? I want to say to you quickly that throughout the Bible, there are several influential people that have had some horrific past that could have crippled them and keep them frozen and stuck, that they would become nothing. The great David, a man described as a man after God's own heart. The man was an adulterer when he took Uriah's wife, Bathsheba, and he was also a murderer. He sent the guy to the head of the battle that he was killed so he could get his wife. So the man would not have found out that he had impregnated his wife while he was at the battle. Many people can't survive, can't come back after that kind of past. But hey, God confronted David himself. And the Lord said to him through Nathan the prophet, you are the man. And so David became broken. He said in Psalm 38:4, my guilt has overwhelmed me like a burden too heavy to bear. And by then he wrote Psalm 51 and he owned his mess, and he says, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. A right spirit, that means one that is ready to do what you bid this spirit to do. That's what David was saying. I am ready for change. I am ready to be different. So I own where I'm at. Job, the amazing Job. What great faith. But he was lost and bitter, and he felt hopeless until God came to him and confronted him. Job said, why did I not perish at birth? He may as well have killed me. Why did I not die as I came from the womb? So I didn't have to live through this. You read Job 3:11. He says, I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest. Every day is turmoil. I'm miserable every day. This is what he says, self-hate. I loathe my very life. Therefore, I will give free rein to my complaint. I don't care again. I'm going to cuss anybody I want to cuss because I don't care. I will give free rein to my complaint. Not going to shut it in anymore. I'm just going to talk. I'm going to speak out in the bitterness of my soul. But those of us who are familiar with the rest of scripture about Job, you know how Job said, even though he slay me, I'm going to trust him at the end of the story. But God confronted Job near the end of that book. And God said, tell me, where were you when I created the heavens? Like, you are complaining. Where were you when I determined that this should be your fate? Where were you? And out of that, I want to say to you, because this is where I'm going with you, that your circumstances are not by chance. God is not in shock or fright that this has happened to you. Jeremiah, the great prophet Jeremiah, the weeping Jeremiah, the writer of the Lamentations, Jeremiah kind of guy who talks about, I will recall the goodness of God. Jeremiah was despaired and he felt like a failure. He was so depressive, in and out. When you read that book of Jeremiah, this guy was up, down in his moods. But God confronted him. Jeremiah was so upset and hopeless. He said, cursed be the day I was born. My goodness, most of us celebrate birthdays, even when we celebrate nothing else in our lives. We're excited about the day we were born. This guy, this prophet, said, cursed be the day I was born. Why did I ever come out of the womb to see trouble and sorrow, to end my days in shame? Why was I born? Why did my mother not just kill me? Why did I not die? These are deep emotions and past that are painful. Jacob had a past. Guy was a trickster, con artist, and he told God that he would not let him go till God did something to change his life. But Jacob met God at Bethel and was ready for change. Change comes when you are ready for change. But maybe the past is what is your crutch. You like to use it as the reason you cannot move forward. And so you like to keep it. Well, obviously it's working for you, but for Jacob, it wasn't, because he was about to meet his brother Esau, who could have been ready to destroy him. But Jacob held on to the angel of God until that angel blessed him and gave him a change of name. He was ready for change. Peter, the great Peter, the first bishop of the church in the New Testament. Peter denied Christ. He said 3 times, I don't know the man. He experienced shame when that cock crowed 3 times. He experienced disappointment and guilt. He felt like this evil person till Jesus confronted Peter. After the resurrection, Jesus said, you tell the disciples and Peter that I'm alive, and Peter. And then he met him. You read John 21, he met Peter and the others while they were out fishing, and Jesus came on the waters and Jesus called Peter. Peter was so ashamed. His shame took him back into the job he used to do. Some people's shame bring them back into things that they've left years before because you're stuck. But he met Jesus. Paul, the great apostle, writer of the 13 letters in the New Testament. Paul was an abuser who would abuse the believers and murder. He stood there and sanctioned the murder of the servant of God. And Paul later became a felon, a prison bird, in and out of prison for the gospel's sake. But Paul's life only changed when he met the Spirit of God on Damascus Road, and God transformed his life. And so that's where change came for him. Rahab, the harlot, it's talked about as the children of Israel moved to conquer the land in Numbers and in Joshua as they were moving towards Canaan. Rahab was the harlot who brought safety and protection to the 12 spies who went up to view the land. She was a harlot until she met men of God. Rahab later became the mother of Boaz. Yeah, the same Boaz that Ruth married, the kingsman redeemer, who was Obed's father, and Obed was the father of Jesse, who was the grandfather of David. That same Boaz. His mother was a prostitute, a harlot. Yet God used her, moved her from that past. Why am I telling you these things? Because the truth is, Jeremiah said, before you formed me, you knew me. You knew all the things that I would encounter. You knew what I would become. You knew all the mistakes I would have made. You knew all the mess I would have gotten myself in. Oh God, you knew all the dumb things that I would have done. And David said it too. He says, where can I hide from your presence? If I make my bed in hell, you are there. He says, if I take the wings of the morning, you are there. He says, yet you still fashion me fearfully and wonderfully. But my favorite verse in this passage, Psalm 139, verses 16 and 17, it says, you have laid out my life before me. Actually, that's the first verse I have used in my book, in the first chapter of my book. All the days of my life were laid out before me before I had even lived one day. They were already planned and laid out before me, even before I was conceived, worse, before I was born. God already planned them. And so your mess is not oh, I need to go to the drawing board quickly to see what's happening here. That's not God. That's not the picture of it for God. He knew the mess we would have been. He knew exactly the things that would have been keeping us feeling ashamed and guilty and disappointed and just sad. But his grace, he has made his grace sufficient. So Jesus says in John chapter 15, 16, Jesus says, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you. He didn't choose God. He chose you. He chose you. He chose you with your mess and all. He chose you because he knew when you were 15, you were going to mess up so badly. He knew that at 25, you were going to be a greater mess. Yet he chose you. He went into Peter's boat, choosing Peter before Peter even had come to him. He chose him, mess and all, knowing he was going to deny him, knowing he was going to go back to fishing. Yet he chose him. So I want to say to you that your mess is a part of your message. And if you remember nothing else, remember that in the end, God will work all things out for your good. He will turn it around for your good. And so we continue to hope in God. Why do we hope? Because God's plan for us is that he has great things in store for us. And he will restore all that you've lost, like Job. He will uplift all that, the reputation and whatever else, like Paul, like Rahab's, like the woman at the well at Sychar, who became an evangelist after being an adulteress for so many years with 5 different husbands. God can transform and change and even use your past to make you a greater future. That's what I want you to think of today. So be anxious for nothing about what's happening in your life. At the end of the day, healing is what you want. And of course, I had to use my slogan today. Healing is a great feeling. What a place to be when you have received healing in your mind, in your emotions, in your spirit. You have to first get to this place of healing by starting with acceptance. If you do not own where you are in your life, then there's no change that will likely come to you. You have to own your own identity. This is who I am, a hot mess. This is who I am, stuck in my past, victimizing myself, like to be the victim that everybody is sorry for. You have to own who you are. Peter said, I'm not worthy. I knew I denied him. I'm not. He said, I'm not worthy. After Jesus said, cast your net on the other side, he bowed before him. He said, I am not worthy to be in your presence because my past is too much for me to bear. He was able to own that. And you have to own that. Acknowledge that your emotions, what you feel, are not facts. I get it, they're real. You feel them, but they're not facts about you. You're entitled to feel them, but they do not define you. You're not guilt. You're not shame. You feel them, but you're not. You're not a disappointment. You feel disappointment. You are not it. I describe them as adjectives because adjectives really just describe you in your circumstance in that moment. So I feel whatever. They're not your definition. They're not. And so they describe your shame from failing, but you're not a failure. They describe your guilt from messing up, and that's okay. You are perfectly imperfect. And I hope that you know that. And I hope that somebody can receive some level of deliverance in that fact. You're not perfect, and you're never going to be. You are perfectly imperfect, and God is satisfied with that. He alone is perfect.